All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for making it out here tonight. Before we start, before I call the meeting to order, I just want to take a moment to thank our IT staff here in the city of Royal Oak. As you are aware, CrowdStrike, their update on the Windows operating systems throughout the world had a significant impact on industries from airlines, which I personally had to endure on Friday, to banking institutions and to municipalities and government organizations all over the world. Certainly we found a way and had a way in some way. We're fortunate that our 911 services continued to be up and running and making sure we could provide those essential services to people. And our IT department got the remainder parts of the city up and running in short order, and certainly is taking lessons from this as well in terms of how to further protect our systems down the road, like so many other organizations. So certainly something that was unexpected, something that should not happen when you have these sort of software updates, and certainly affected a lot of communities and cities and governments throughout the world. But with the hard work of our IT department, we managed to have some very minimal impacts. So that's very fortunate. So I'm going to call to order the Monday, July 22nd, 2024 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We're going to begin with an invocation given by Mayor Pro Tem Hunt, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that you stand if you can, please.
Good evening. We are all here this evening for the same reason. We love our community and we have a deep connection to it. However, in a world that feels divided and fragmented, the simple act of connecting with our neighbors can be a transformative experience, not just for ourselves, but for our entire community. We live in a time where technology connects us globally, yet it can sometimes keep us from forming deep, meaningful relationships locally. Social media may fill our feeds with updates and likes, but it often lacks the warmth and genuine conversation, and the kind that happens face-to-face and heart-to-heart. However, when we take the time to reach out to get to know one another and those in our community, we begin to dismantle those barriers. We start to see them not only as strangers, but as fellow human beings with stories, struggles, and dreams just like our own. Each conversation, each shared moment chips away at the barriers that separate us. We move from labels and stereotypes to understanding and empathy. This is the beauty of community. It fosters connection. It reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles. It encourages us to share our burdens and celebrate our joys together. By reaching out to our neighbors, we can create a tapestry of support, a network of care that uplifts everyone. Community becomes a sanctuary where we can find solace in each other's presence, understanding that we are all part of something greater than ourselves. So I urge each of you, take a step to break down barriers that may exist between you and your neighbors. Introduce yourself to someone new, attend a local event, volunteer for a community project. Ask questions and listen, not only with an open mind, but also an open heart. You may be surprised by the connections you forge and the understanding you gain. Together, we can create a community that thrives on connection, understanding, and support, a place where everyone can feel seen, heard, and valued. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that brings us to item 4 tonight, which is the approval of the agenda. Commissioner Macy. We have a motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Herzog. Discussion on the agenda. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item number 5. It's the Police Department check presentation to Team Tessa.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here tonight. It's pretty exciting. As most of you know, for many, many years, the police department partnered with Fifth Avenue and hosted a charity golf outing for years and years, and we tried to select a beneficiary that was deserving in the community, and we continued that tradition this year. as well as the fire department and us brought back the charity hockey game. It had been gone for about 2 or 3 years. We decided to combine forces once again and hit the ice and play the Red Wings alumni for charity. But the great part is we collaborated and decided that we wanted to pick one local charity, combine our efforts, and give them one check for both events. So I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Renault. She's going to kind of break down exactly how much we raised, and then we're going to introduce the charity that we're excited for.
Thank you. So like Chief Moore said, we picked Love Team Tessa. So if you're not aware of the organization, it was named for Tessa, who was a warrior and fought cancer as long as she could. Unfortunately, she ultimately ended up passing away from neuroblastoma. So the foundation was formed, it's actually based out of Royal Oak, and they continue to help fight childhood cancer. So the fire department held tried to organize the charity hockey, and were able to raise $8,300 for that. A couple weeks later, we held the charity golf outing. The outing, along with the sponsorships, we were able to raise $24,200. So tonight, we're able to present a check to Team Tessa for $32,500. I'm not sure if you guys want to say something, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Royal Oak. We're a community that's from here. Tessa was raised here, and we ended up fighting our battle at Beaumont Hospital. Our nonprofit, we help children that are going through cancer, help their families, help them out, whatever they need, rent payments, room makeovers, bathrooms. I get stuck with those because I'm a carpenter. And just whatever the family needs, because we had such a great community helping us when we were going through our tragic time. I can't believe this. I went to the hockey game, and it was so unbelievable. All the people there, all the Red Wings are there, and I wish I would have saw the golf outing, but I can't thank you guys enough. This means so much. It's going to help so many families out. Thanks. Sure. Come on, Karen J.
Yeah, do you want to maybe, you guys mind if we spread out?
You're sure we're okay to approach the dais?
Permission granted, Chief Moore.
Great.
Mr. Mayor, stop with the bunny ears to the chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we just want to thank you for sharing your story. Tessa is remembered, and the work that you're doing matters a lot. And just really grateful that, you continue the work that you're doing on behalf of other folks, and that as a parent, we can't even begin to imagine, what you guys have gone through, but what you're doing for others, we can imagine, and it's so positive, and our community is so grateful. And thank you to the police and fire departments for showcasing the character of who is really behind the uniforms working here in this community. They are good, solid people with big hearts, and we're just really grateful as the people here in the city of Royal Oak, so thank you.
Look who's carrying the check.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to item 6 tonight, which is a proclamation designating July 26, 2024 as Americans with Disabilities Act Awareness Day in Royal Oak. Do we have someone here tonight to accept the proclamation? Okay, perfect.
Hello, this is Annie signing. My name is Annie Uraski. I am Vice Chair for the Human Rights Commission with the City of Royal Oak. I am thrilled to be here today.
Well, we're thrilled to have you as well. So it really is an honor to read this proclamation. This is a proclamation designating July 26, 2024 as Americans with Disability Act Awareness Day in Royal Oak. Whereas the Americans with Disability Act was signed into law on July 26, 1990, establishing a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers, changing perceptions, and increasing opportunities for full participation and inclusion in community life. And whereas continued commitment to the principles of the ADA is necessary to help individuals with disabilities reach their full potential. And whereas on July 26, 2019, our city, state, and nation will commemorate the 29th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, recognizing and celebrating progress that has been made. And whereas the City of Royal Oak encourages people to reaffirm the principles of equality and inclusion laid out in the ADA and recommit our efforts to reach full ADA compliance so that every person in our city has the opportunity to succeed. Whereas the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if we remain committed to continuing our efforts to fully implement the ADA. And now, therefore, the Royal Oak City Commission do hereby proclaim July 26, 2024 in the City of Royal Oak as Americans with Disabilities Act Awareness Day. It's my privilege to present this. Thank you. And would you like to say any words more?
Sure. This is Annie. The month of July is very important to people with disabilities. You know, in the 1990s, they signed the Americans with Disability Act, and this month is also Disability Pride Month. It's important for everyone to celebrate. We celebrate inclusion, welcome people with a disability. It's important to have someone to look up to as a person with a disability. And I really encourage each and every one of you to chat with people with a disability, include them into your community, invite them, learn from them, and promote information about people with a disability in your program services and activities, and think about including them throughout your everyday life. I am honored to accept this proclamation through the Human Rights Commission, and I'm really thankful for the commitment to continue this.
All right, amazing. July 26th, mark your calendars. All right, this brings us to item 7 tonight, which is public comment. Just a few comments before we start public comment. The City Commission values and relies on our fellow citizens to help make informed decisions. Now's the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on any city-related topic, whether or not it's on the agenda. I ask that comments be directed to the City Commission as a whole and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight at public comment, please wait until recognized by me, the mayor, and then come up to the podium. For the record, we'll ask that you state your name and address. Please be mindful the City Commission wishes to hear from anyone who wants to speak tonight, so comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, not per topic. And we've included a timer at the podium to help you keep track of your time. If you don't wish to speak tonight, no problem. Many people reach out to us via email, the grocery store, wherever they see us, and help make their minds heard. Please note that we typically don't respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are writing those questions down, and when the topic is discussed, we will ask those questions. If your questions are unrelated to anything we're going to speak about tonight, we are taking notes, and the city manager will follow up on those items as necessary. But in order to get back to you, we kindly ask that you submit your information to the absolutely outstanding Ms. Judy Davids, our community engagement specialist, and she can certainly make sure when we get those answers, we can get them back to you. Unless they're completely rhetorical questions, then just, don't use the inflection at the end of the question so we understand it's rhetorical. So with that, who's first tonight? Okay. Ms. Van Heetsma.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. On your consent agenda tonight, item 8E, I think it is approval for an easement on Washington. And I just wanted to give you a little tidbit on that. So we had a group of students that were concerned about, we're having some parking changes at the middle school. I think anybody in the community hears about the challenges of parking at the middle school. But we're very grateful. We had students come and do a presentation to the board, to the school board, and outlined all their concerns about the safety of their peers. And so it was a great project. They did a beautiful presentation, brought a lot of facts to us. And so part of that has led to us doing, some reworking of the middle school parking to ensure that the students are safe. And we thank those students for being brave and coming forward to us and expressing their opinions and thoughts. And so please, as you consider that item on the consent agenda, I hope you will be supportive, which you continue to be. So thank you. And thank you to the middle school principal and her whole team for encouraging those students to bring forth their work to us. So we're very grateful. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a really good story to say even our youngest citizens, especially those that are, they're living the parking. They may not be driving the car, but they're walking. They're doing so many different things, and including them in the process was a really good idea, and probably is going to produce one of the best outcomes. So. And
communication plans. They even talked about communication plans to the students that they can pass on to their parents, which is amazing. And just to back up, 2624 Glenwood. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Alan.
My name is Alan Wendy. Why I'm here today, I'm gonna try and put I go straight in Birmingham, and I want to put a tent up in the park on Woodard Crew on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And the guy who want to come and find out, okay, put a tent, what you need to do, put a tent up, what you need to do to get a permit, he want to know. So what do you need to do to get a tent up? What do you need to do?
Yep, we got Ms. Davids actually will help Alan with the permitting process, and I will call the pastor as we spoke before coming in.
Thank you. And another one, I work the guy on the weekend, and the kids don't know how to park the car, and a lot of time people come and park in the parking lot, and I'm trying to do my job, and the kid don't want to go home. And a lot of the kids make fun of me, and I'm trying to do my job, and they make fun of me. So why I'm here and tell you what's going on, my guy here.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I see the chief making some notes there as well. We can get to the bottom of that as well.
I'm
Thank
glad
you
I
for
come
helping out
today.
at the parking, Alan. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I do a good job on Woodward. The people like me.
You sure do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alan. All right, who's next? Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford, Royal Oak. Just want to state that I object to your continued approval of the oligarch developer projects that violate the rights of the residents and business owners alike. The ZBA approved 81 parking spaces in the Lafayette structure will save Okuri, the developer, at least $2 million of construction cost. Does Okuri's ARPA fund request for parking space reservation mean assigned parking spaces? Assigned parking spaces for the Etkin building and the 2nd Street parking structure is not working well for customer parking, and the DDA is considering taking the designated parking spaces away. I'm also concerned that on July 11th, the ZBA refused to accept a request to reconsider the June 13th decision to allow Okuri's proposed 11-story apartment building at 5th and Lafayette to have 81 spaces in the Lafayette parking structure, in addition to the 82 spaces previously allocated to the Baker College. The Planning Department memo included in the June 13 ZBA meeting agenda states that since the previous meeting, the petitioner has not provided any additional material, nor has made any modifications to the proposed plans which would alter the variance requests as listed. In fact, however, the developer hired an attorney who provided a significant amount of new information on June 11th in anticipation of the June 13th ZBA meeting. Notably, the 2023-24 parking utilization data for the Lafayette structure. Parking data for the current year is not a parking study. Downtown business has been significantly depressed since the March 2020 COVID shutdown and the MPS parking system installed at the end of the shutdown. That's turned away a lot of people from downtown, as you know. The Planning Department was advised in advance, in writing, that we would be requesting a reconsideration of the ZBA decision at the July 11 meeting as allowed per the Royal Oak zoning ordinances. At the meeting, the ZBA chairman stated that he could not accept a request for reconsideration. I have been advised by two persons that the ZBA was told not to listen to the request for reconsideration. So goes socialism in Royal Oak.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. All right, who's next tonight? Going once. Yes,
Nancy Poprovsky, concerned citizen, about waiving environmentally essential promises from the 13 and Greenfield project. The developer paid little penalty for destroying needed along the perimeter trees. Real arborists who assessed these trees said they only needed care due to neglect, but it was obvious the developer didn't care. I hope that the promises of impervious surfaces, rain gardens, not flower beds, solar and other environmental necessities aren't waived or downgraded. This would be hypocritical since the city promotes green. Several months ago, the developer destroyed trees that could have been acting as shade during these blistering hot days for the adjacent neighbors, while nothing has been built yet. Another case of not caring for others. Next subject. As a child, were you or a person close to you overlooked? Maybe a friend didn't care or choose you for a play date. Maybe you weren't invited to a party. If you weren't that child and saw someone being overlooked, did you feel compassion for them? I hope so. I had a friend due to disabilities that was overlooked. My parents taught me to defend them. Why do some people not have compassion for challenged persons? Were they forgotten and now bitter? Were they not taught to be inclusive? Were they privileged, getting everything, never experiencing pain or not being included? Today you are proclaiming July 26th as Americans with Disabilities Act Awareness Day, ensuring the civil rights of people with disabilities. This proclamation did not happen at 4704 Rochester Road with no elevator for almost 4 stories. I hope this proclamation is not disregarded at 505 Lafayette by waiving 81 parking spots, making it impossible for any person with challenges to live there, or by using up parking structure spots, making it challenging for anyone to visit the area for other business. It's past time to make some developers and their teams accountable and downsize or change their plans. Not a city to change its whole character and inconvenience citizens for the sake of more profit. There are people in this room who have experienced discrimination for one reason or another, or know someone who has or still is. All of us need to go deep into our hearts and not our profits to give more compassion that's priceless. And someday you might be that person who's overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moratsky. All right, who's next tonight? Yes, Gail.
Good evening. Gail Von Staden, principal residence at 504 South Washington Avenue. It is also my principal place of work. I own a architecture firm there, and I am the landlord of the 2 retail tenants in that building, which is Citizen Yoga and Rail and Anchor. I concur with Mr. Harrison's comments about the proposed development on Lafayette, and there are comments that I wish to make about the zoning board's decision to approve the 81 parking spaces. I believe that the zoning board should have validated the findings of this report that was provided to the commission, to the board, prior to any action. Those findings are in stark contrast to the report that was paid for by the City of Royal Oak. It was a memo from Fleiss and Vanderbroek. It was not a parking study, as Mr. Harrison mentioned. The petitioner stated that the parking was infeasible on the site due to the geometry. I'm an architect. I solve problems all day. I believe that there could be ways of solving that problem, but I don't believe that the project has been afforded enough time to examine it. I believe there was also a statement about groundwater. Baker College has underground parking. We have a basement. I am not aware of any water in either of those locations. The board should have, I believe, made conditional, if it was going to approve this parking variance, it should have done so with conditions. It should have directed the city staff to engage an independent parking consultant to validate the findings presented by Fleiss and Vanderbroek in the memo. We have empirical data based on our tenants and our employees that parking deck does not have the capacity that was suggested in that Fleiss and Vanderbroek memo. The board needs to revoke its unconditional approval and place conditions on the granted variance, namely in order to ensure that parking will be available no matter the conditions in the city. There are many restaurants that are empty in that side of town. There are retail sites that are empty on that side of town. Should those be occupied, the parking would be further taxed. So that load on the parking structure, I don't believe has been validated. I believe that the board should have required the petitioner to show that they have studied a mechanical parking system and that they should include approval language for binding parking agreements with the city parking manager. Today it's Parkrite. Who knows what it'll be in 20 years? The building will be around for a long time, to ensure that the building owner will reserve such spots for residents should the decision be to continue to provide that the provisions for parking for that building in a structure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Phyllis Salter, if you're lucky tonight, because I was going to tell you to please try and be on time for us. So I'll assume we're going to get more on time later. Anyway, I did a little research, and the Michigan Open Meetings Act states that there are only 10 exceptions for meetings being closed to the public. Many appear to be regarding things like the staff, the litigation, realty, an attorney for bargaining agreement. I don't know if those are what you talk about when you're back there. Regarding speaking in meetings, the public has a First Amendment right when speaking to a commissioner, except when unruly, of course, to speak anytime. I didn't find anything in the act stating that we could not use the name of a specific commissioner. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, anyone else tonight? Going once, going twice. All right, we're going to close session, or we're going to close public comment, And we're going to bring the discussion back to this side of the table. All right, that brings us to item 8, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda tonight? Does anyone wish to make a motion regarding the consent agenda? Commissioner Macy. We have a motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. All right, discussion on the consent agenda as presented. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that brings us to item 9, which is the EBS CO Solar Library Grant. And I see Ms. Martin and Ms. Irwin are here. The power team, Commissioner Douglas, you can mark that one down as a dad joke. All right.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners.
Oh, and Ms. Fox as well. I didn't see you coming up as well.
We are here today to bring before you the EBSCO Solar Library Grant for $70,000. Royal Oak was one of 5 libraries selected in a worldwide competitive grant process for funding a solar array. This grant will offset costs of a planned rooftop solar project at our library. Whereas Commission approved the allocation of $362,000 in ARPA funds for this project, and whereas this project meets the goals outlined in both Royal Oak's strategic plan through the investment in green infrastructure and the SCAP plan by increasing energy efficiency in municipal buildings and by installing solar energy as a renewable energy solution. The project estimates and assumptions, as provided by Michigan Solar Solutions, indicate a $20,000 annual savings in electricity costs and a reduction in energy consumption of approximately 48%. I want to share with you how proud I am to have been able to work collaboratively with my colleagues Sandy Irwin and Angela Fox, and together we ask for a resolution to accept this award that will enable us to begin work on this great project.
Wonderful. Questions? Anything they can shed light on? Commissioner Macy?
I was wondering if we could get our library director to shed a little light on what's happening with the roof, the timeline, and what it looks like.
Hi. So, hello, commissioners. We had the library board approved a proposal for our roof that should be coming to you at your next meeting for about $530,000. So that was done through the Department of Public Services. They did use an outside consultant to get the roof bids, and so we're looking forward to our roof. The solar doesn't happen without the roof, so roof, then solar. We're very excited. You know, rooftops are expensive. I said $530,000. That's a pretty big chunk of change, and we are so appreciative of EBSCO for providing us with this grant for our solar, and to the commission for the ARPA funds that were allocated, and we're glad to help the commission save money through having this grant and use that $70,000 elsewhere. So thank you so much. I would also like to just take a moment to thank my colleagues for all of their work. It's working really well across the city as a team, the staff speaking with each other and working together to make things like this happen. I would also like to take a moment to thank the library board for always being supportive of all the different things that we want to do and having a critical eye on our finances and all of the outcomes that we wish to achieve for our community, and to the Environmental Advisory Board for putting the SCAP together and the commission for approving it, and for the boards and commissions for being the voice of our citizens to the staff. It's all very much appreciated. Thank you.
Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Irwin, I'm excited to hear that there's a new roof coming. That's been talked about 8 years ago when Commissioner Mason and I first joined the library board. That was a discussion then. I think it was $360,000 back then that we did have money for, so it's no surprise it costs more now, but it's much needed. I think we've gotten all the life possible out of that old, uncared for roof. I do have a question. I just want to, and I'm sorry, my screen went blank for a second. I just want to make sure that we can get some light on some of the RASs. In particular,
there's a whereas that the grant requires the City of Royal Oak certifies compliance with requirements of project costs. Can someone give us a little idea of what that looks like, what we have to do that, and just the load and how that goes?
Sorry, I've got to look at my information.
It's the second whereas in the proposed resolution to the City Commission.
I see it.
I guess the
Thanks for a
question is,
second.
what is the compliance that we need to comply with?
Pretty much, you need to do the project. We submitted the project and all of the details that were provided to us by Michigan Solar Solutions. And so it's, we are agreeing that we will put the solar array on the roof as we have proposed, so, to them. And that's all was in the Michigan Solar Solutions information that was given to us. So I don't know if I can give you more detail.
And they understand the total project cost far exceeds the $70,000. We can't take the $70,000 to do the engineering and the planning and not follow through with the project.
So really, we're taking the money and we're spending the money. That's what they want from us.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hunt.
I think my question kind of piggybacks on Commissioner Colo's, but I want to first thank you for going out for this grant, leveraging the funds that we have in order to, get additional funds to put solar on the roof. So thank you so much for that. But I think it may go to Mr. Grochowski. I understand that you had an opportunity to look over the contract, and part of the terms are this could be terminated and they take the $70,000 back if there's not substantial compliance in a timely fashion, for lack of, those aren't the exact terms. Substantial progress in the completion of the project. So is there a timeline that you know of that they need to be working within? How is substantial completion within?
Well, and most
how
of
is
that
determined?
Thank you. And most of that's laid out, some of that's laid out in the agreement as you detail, but the detailed outline in the Exhibit A is basically what we're going with, that puts together the costs, the energy estimates. I assume the involved staff have a particular timeline. We didn't necessarily commit to one in the agreement. As long as we're moving forward with the project substantially compliant, I don't believe the agreement requires us to hit certain benchmarks at certain times. So I think we're adequately protected. Like, they're not just going to walk away if we're in the middle of the contract executing as we've agreed to do. So I think the terms of that agreement help us in that regard, but maybe there's a better timeline estimate from.
It all relies on the roof. And on the, Angela is working currently on solar RFPs and information. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Sure. So two things really have to come together first before we can put together a really concrete timeline for the solar project. One, as we mentioned, was the roof. The second is hiring the solar contractor, the contractor for the solar company, which will help us develop the timeline, the grant requirements. They've been working with us for about 2 years now, and we haven't compensated them yet. So we'd like to bring them on officially sooner rather than later, or put out an RFP process to formalize that relationship, either with them or a competitor. And we're hoping that by bringing them on as a full-time partner, we'll be able to put together that concrete timeline now that we have the roof approved.
And I will add that the agreement does require an interim report on December 31st of 2024, so at the end of the year, and then no less than 30 days after the completion of the project, we're required to basically file a closing report evidencing that we did spend the money as required. So that leaves open-ended in my mind from a contractual standpoint that we pretty much, once we give them the interim report, I'm assuming we'll have a timeline by the end of the year, that we then have 30 days after we complete the installation of the solar. So it gives us plenty of time, I believe, because it is so open-ended.
Thank you.
I would also like to add on that timeline is once they get the contract, they said it takes about 6 months for them to get everything. So Once we sign an agreement with whomever gets the RFP for the solar, it will be 6 months out from there. So they will have to order and get all of the things in. So we did lay that out in our grant application, that once our roof starts and we get the solar, so all those things will be happening at the same time. So yes, so 6 months from order.
Any other questions? Commissioner Colo?
Thank you. I guess just over the course of this conversation, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that this grant was coming from Michigan Solar Solutions. Can someone explain to us who ESBCO Incorporated is?
Yes.
And how they fit into this? Are they a public-private government and semi-government entity, et cetera?
So the EBSCO, EBSCO, they're called EBSCO, they are a database provider for libraries. So if you happen to use the Michigan Electronic Library at all, or you receive the library newsletters that you can subscribe to, they are all provided by EBSCO. So EBSCO provides research databases across our nation. The state of Michigan pays for EBSCO databases for all of you to use if you're a resident of Michigan. So they have been doing the solar program for a while now, and each year they grant solar projects to libraries across the world. So EBSCO is a database provider. So yes, they are for profit, but they also provide a lot of research for libraries.
And then the Michigan Solar Solutions pamphlet that we got, how did that come to us, and what's proposed in that, I guess?
So the Michigan Solar Solutions worked, everybody go in your time machines. You're going your time machine back to when the SCAP was put together. Michigan Solar Solutions worked with our previous sustainability manager, Julie Lyons-Bricker, to come up with the estimates of what, first of all, the best locations for solar in the city, and then the estimates of what that would cost. So Michigan Solar Solutions has been providing the city with that information for several years now. And then when the ARPA funds came up, it was the basis from the estimate from Michigan Solar Solutions that determined what the ARPA funds would have been for the library's solar on the roof. So they have just been a critical partner of the city for multiple years now. I hope that helps.
Commissioner Herzog?
And then just for clarification, Ms. Fox, you mentioned that it's Michigan Solar Solutions that have been working with us for 2 years, and now we're trying to make them we might be making them a full-time.
Yeah, we're going to put out an RFP, so I imagine we'll likely get competitors, but we certainly would love the opportunity to explore all of the partners in the area, but they've been the ones really helping us for the past couple of years.
Commissioner Macy?
Move approval of this great project. It's a great grant. Thank you so much for the three of you for your work to get it for us.
All right, we have a motion for the resolution. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Herzog. All right, discussion. Commissioner Herzog. No, you're.
It's more a process question.
Sure.
I think we were a little confused there through the questions with, I forget to turn my mic
I got you back.
Is it in the process that the commission in their packets get the grant, the actual grant application that might have some of this background information? Does that normally come in your packet or our packet?
No, I haven't seen it before. I haven't seen the applications.
We can do that.
But I don't know if it's...
Or get it to you if you're the one that wants to read the details of it.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just say what a great experience too when you get the timeline settled in for the patrons of the library of all ages. I mean, what a cool story to talk about from a technology point of view, from a sustainability point of view, from trying new things point of view. And I think you guys will get really creative in terms of how you notify our patrons, but also involve them along the way with this cool addition to the library. So really neat. Thank you for your hard work. And by the way, a great example of how we, a while ago, structured the organization a little differently to be able to take advantage of these grant opportunities and to manage SCAP, hands-on directly, not as part-time jobs for everyone, but full-time jobs. And literally the math on this is, a great investment for the city. When you look at the grants that are coming in, to look at the progress we're making on our SCAP, this has been a great financial decision, and we're glad to have you guys on board.
Thank you.
All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, we can book that one. All right.
That's Susan left. She's cracking up.
All right, we'll go to number 10 now, Community Energy Management Grant 2024, and we have Ms. Fox and Ms. Martin here again as well.
I was trying to stop you. Good evening again. Today, we are also bringing before you a request for a resolution to accept a State of Michigan Eagle Community Energy Management Grant in the amount of $100,000 for the Royal Oak Battle of the Buildings project. This project aims to analyze, benchmark, and improve efficiency across all sectors. This grant will allow the city to work with the business community to find energy-efficient, tailor-made solutions to address and reduce energy consumption in a fun and competitive way. This project aligns with the Royal Oak Sustainability and Climate Action Plan through the Energy and Buildings Vision, which prioritizes a built environment that promotes accessible energy resource efficiency, renewable energy, sustainable building techniques, and resiliency. Our sustainability manager, Angela Fox, is here with me if you have any project-specific questions. But before I turn it over to her, I want you to know that Angela, through this project, was able to show the reviewers at Eagle how even though this project at a glance wasn't a textbook project, that it was full of merit and worthy of full maximum approval.
Great, so I'll just briefly explain what the Battle of the Buildings competition is for all of you, and that might help kind of understand how this grant will be utilized. The Battle of the Buildings competition is a statewide competition. It started 10 years ago. They're in their 10th anniversary. It is ran by the USGBC West Michigan, which is essentially the organization that takes care of LEED certifications for buildings. We are currently in the process internally of benchmarking our city buildings, and eventually we'll be doing energy audits on those buildings to learn how to make them more efficient. Around that same time, the idea of floating this Battle of the Building competition for community businesses was developed, and this grant funding will help make that possible. So while we're doing city buildings, we can do community buildings at the same time. And so what we're proposing that this grant will fund is essentially benchmarking for any business that is interested, and that will be done for like the past 3 years of energy usage for the buildings. And then that will allow business owners to really see the health of their businesses within the community. And then from there, we can better support them through energy efficiency upgrades, whether that be HVAC or lighting, temperature control. We'll hopefully have data and information in support of these business owners to help them make their buildings more sustainable through this process.
And do you see through the process not just sustainability being a benefit, but for the economic benefit of these businesses going through this process, they'll also hopefully have a more comprehensive picture on how to save money on their utilities while being more sustainable?
That's exactly right. And hopefully we can pursue future grant funding to help them make those energy efficiency upgrades and even look for industry specific. Like, it just opens us up to creating pathways for future initiatives. And really, the first step is getting businesses to participate.
We've been saying that a long time. You know, environmental sustainability and economic growth are not mutually exclusive. And in fact, a lot of times they promote each other. All right, sorry I had to get that plug in because past years of wild discussion we had at this dais. Questions? Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for another grant here to, advance our climate action goals. This is great. How do you see people applying for this? I've only been asked how many buildings you see. I'm sure it's a square footage question, right? Because a small building on Main Street is not the same as Coral Hospital, right? So how many, what kind of square footage do you see us being able to evaluate over the city? What kind of process you envision? I'm sure there will be an application to see which buildings could get into this.
Yeah, so we've been working with the USGBC West Michigan for a few months now. We actively hired a fellow from the University of Michigan to help us developed this program. Yeah. She's actually really wonderful. But the USGBC hasn't focused their attention on targeting local governments. They've worked with the city of Ann Arbor, the city of Detroit, obviously the city of Grand Rapids, but this framework helps them figure out how to come into a community such as Royal Oak and help implement a project such as this. And so it's been a really informative process for them. We kind of get to be a test city, so to speak, but ideally we'll have an application not only on the city website, but as well as the Michigan Battle of the Buildings website. We currently already have 23 businesses and organizations already participating in this competition, including the hospital, Beaumont, as well as I think Fifth Third Banks. There's quite a few where they have a branch here, but they have other branches elsewhere. And so it's not a new concept for quite a few of our larger businesses, but it definitely will be a new idea and concept for our smaller businesses. So we plan on rolling out a series of workshops to help them through it, understanding exactly what they get through signing up, and then essentially even going business to business for the businesses that we think this could be really useful.
Yeah, because I look at places like Alchemy, who's trying to do a lot with green initiatives, and hopefully we can use our economic development specialists to help reach out to those businesses in our DDA and beyond, and some of these smaller mom and pop type shops. Corel definitely has the means to do this.
Yeah.
Maybe I hope we're focusing on our local homemade businesses.
That's exactly right. And I can't necessarily put a square footage to it, but I'm looking for ideally 30, 35 participants this first year. If we got that many, I would be quite happy.
Any other questions? Commissioner Herzog.
Yeah, thank you again for a great sustainability grant. My question is this is happening already with our city buildings, or it will be?
We haven't entered ourselves into the competition. That's certainly something I'm looking to explore, but I would want to utilize the EAB for that. Right now, we have been benchmarking internally, but the USGBC just launched a program where they will benchmark for us, which is a wonderful, very worth the cost investment. It's been a considerable amount of my time to try to benchmark these buildings. The electric and gas companies do not make that easy. And so the fact that we can hire an organization like USGBC to do that for us and keep it up to date, not just for our buildings, but our community buildings, it just is going to set us up for success to grow and to get more data. I'm also looking into waste and water as a part of the competition in future years. So we're really thinking about all the different ways that this can add value.
All right. Anyone? Any more questions, comments, or motions? A motion by Commissioner Herzog. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Colo. Discussion? Great work. It's going to be fun, exciting, and not only is it going to get results, it's going to be something that will get a lot of word of mouth, and hopefully the press picks up on it too, and gets people thinking about the things that sometimes we don't have time to think about, especially small business owners and property owners. It's a great way to get the word out and get some support and help. So, great work.
Thank you.
All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
You've been granted permission to do the competition.
Okay, building on that, let's move on.
All right.
I will point out, whatever else we may have heard, it is the Green Building Council.
All right, this brings us to item 11. I see Mr. Murphy is here. Consideration of First Amendment to Greenfield Lane Apartments Plan Unit Development. Mr. Murphy.
Good evening. In October of last year, you approved a rezoning request for a vacant property on Greenfield just south of 13 Mile to rezone it from multiple family residential to planned unit development, or PUD. And that allowed the developer to build a 2-story, 10-unit multifamily building. And the PUD agreement specified terms and included elements that the City Commission deemed community benefits. The developer wants to modify various features and is seeking your approval tonight. So I'll highlight some of those things. Previously, the parking spaces included a hard surface of porous pavers, and that allowed rainwater to drain through. That's eliminated and it's simply concrete parking lot now. There was a masonry screening wall along the south and east property lines. The south wall is proposed to be removed. The east wall would be retained. They're looking to replace 8 of the trees with a different species. They also had identified on the site plan a rain garden in the front yard setback along Greenfield, and that would be eliminated and replaced with a landscape bed. There were roof-mounted solar panels, and the proposal now does not include any of those. There were EV charging for 2 vehicles. The petitioners proposed a different type of charging. They can speak to the reason for that and the output associated with the new charger versus what was identified previously. And the building included numerous energy efficiency features, and none of those are proposed any longer with the amendment that they're seeking from you tonight. We did administratively approve some minor modifications to the floor plans that affected the entrances to the building, but we approved those administratively. The developer is present tonight to answer any questions that you might have and to provide some further reasons as to their shortcomings. If you agree with the proposed changes, there is a suggested resolution for you to consider this as the first amendment to the development agreement.
Questions for Mr. Murphy? Commissioner Colo.
Mr. Murphy, if I recall, when we approved this PUD agreement, we also waived the fee for inch per inch diameter replacement of the trees, if that's correct, to the tune of about $5,000, if I recall.
I believe you are correct. I'm certain the developer recalls. Perhaps they'll be able to answer that question as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy?
No, I was good.
Okay.
Thank you. And just so I recall here, you said what was removed and what was replaced. Do they add any additional community benefits from our community benefits brochure beyond what you just mentioned? I think 5 or 6 they did that. They took out this, added that. Have they added anything above and beyond what you just talked about?
No, they've not identified any things to replace those that they've eliminated. Their only request to you tonight is to eliminate items that you required previously.
So no additional tangible benefits for the citizens railroad. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, the petitioner here tonight, you're welcome to come up here and kind of explain a little bit what you're asking for. And
Yep, good evening, everyone. Rudy Kashat, Baker Properties in Warren, but I am a Royal Oak resident on the other side of 11 Mile. The solar part of it, I mentioned this to the planning. We're still doing solar, but instead of on the roof, they're going to be, so the street light is going to have its own solar on top of it. I didn't know, they didn't mention anything to me at the city about that. Sounded like it was, at planning, sounded like it was okay. But we still have solar. But instead of the solar on the roof, wiring to each unit, each light has its own, the parking lot has its own solar on top of it, pin and so forth. I believe so. In regards to the rain garden, the civil, I don't know, I guess wasn't specific with me, but from my understanding, I wanted to get rid of the honey locust because it's going to grow tall and wide. The trees we presented now, Armstrong gold maple, slender shullet sweet gum. These are the similar trees that they have on that Agree Realty on Woodward. So they're tall, but narrow, and it gives it a nice curb appeal. So, and then in regards to the screen wall on the south, the masonry wall, it was, from my understanding, it was never presented. It was on the print, but it wasn't presented at the hearing, from my understanding. And then even there's an ordinance the city of Royal Oak has. A screen wall is not required between 2 multifamily units. And it's only gonna like make the property tight. So we just wanna open it up like a breath of fresh air, right? So in regards to the previous pavers, I mean, just, they're gonna get damaged when we plow snow or when salt gets dropped over the years, they'll get clogged. I mean, we're putting a nice infiltration trench system, and that's gonna reduce the freezing. And if we leave the pavers, it'll just add on to ice and so on overall. The parking is in the back. There's really no one's gonna see it except the tenants. In regards to the EV stations, we propose 2, we're putting 4 EV stations, so 2 back to back. I'm just not prepared for the solar part. I thought we all made sense at the planning department. But I don't know, maybe something was a little off. I thought it made sense what we were doing with the solar, and I submitted the paperwork to the planning department on that, so I don't know.
Okay. Do we have questions for the petitioner? Oh, is that Commissioner Macy? Sorry, couldn't see you.
So you started to say something about the rain garden, but then you moved on to
Yeah,
the trees.
the civil engineer who was supposed to be here with me, but we had the dates mixed up. He's up north right now with his family. I don't know too much difference between a landscaping or a rain garden. I told him my concern was I didn't want the honey locust trees, because we have 15 feet from the front doors to the beginning of the sidewalk. So they're gonna grow tall and they're gonna grow wide. And it's gonna obviously cause decay, probably touching the buildings. But these trees that I'm presenting will look better, are gonna work beautifully. If you guys ever drive on Woodward on Agree Realty, you can see them, they're beautiful, gives a great curb appeal, shows the building very well, so.
Can I ask one more? And so you said that the difference in the EV charging is that you're gonna have more than before, but Mr. Murphy was saying that it's a different style or a different type of EV charging.
I don't know, I know it's gonna be for 4 cars.
Sorry, do you know, Mr. Murphy?
The original approval included 2 chargers for 2 vehicles. The drawings that you have in front of you identify a different type of charging device. It doesn't identify where they are on the property at all. You've expressed that there may be for 4 vehicles. That's not shown on the drawing that you're considering tonight as the First Amendment.
It'll be for 4 vehicles. So they'll be, back to back, one for this and then back to back one. It'll be for a total for 4 cars, EV stations.
Okay. Commissioner Hunt?
Is the purpose for the change in tree type simply appearance, or what's the reason?
Appearance, for sure, and we don't want it to, to disturb the building. Again, we're only 15 feet from the door to the sidewalk, so definitely the appearance. And it's going to do the function. It's going to be green. I don't know if any of you guys been watched through Agree Realty. It's very pretty how they did it, and it works with the green landscape.
Have you done any research into types of substances that can melt snow on pervious pavers rather than just switch to the concrete that's going to
I wish you would ask that to the engineer. I should have asked them. I didn't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So there are other avenues out there, options out there than just switching to concrete. Is that something that you're consider or willing to go back and take a look at?
We can, but the storm sewer that he presented, that he put on the civil, he says it's gonna work just as good, if not better, so. I wish I had more to add.
And can you explain the solar on the street lights?
Yeah.
How is that gonna, does that provide any energy saving to the
It is,
building?
we're not running no electricity from the units, it's all solar, but I didn't know this was gonna be something, or I would've brought the paperwork with me, or presented it in there. I think it is in there possibly. So instead of rooftop, and then wiring going to each unit, it's each post having its own solar, call it, mini solar on the light.
Okay.
If that makes sense or not.
So it's not necessarily a street light that's lighting the avenue or anything. Is it a light, like a post that's going to be on your complex and on
Correct,
your
it's a
property?
post.
Okay.
And I believe, that picture right there, that he's right there, yep.
But it's on your property?
Correct.
It's not necessarily part of the city easement that lights the street?
No, it's on my property.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
So just to follow up, I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the solar on top of the building was going to power the units inside the building, And now, no, it was.
No, we never agreed to that at our meeting. At our meeting, we never said they were gonna do the inside of the building.
All right,
Correct.
so, I mean, I'm worried that the civil engineer is not here today because I think you're gonna have a lot of questions from this side
Okay.
about the changes that have been made, because we had a certain understanding when we approved this last year, and now we're getting a fairly long list of things that have been changed away from what we consider to be community benefits.
Okay.
And so, to me, going from solar on the rooftop to some solar-powered parking lights, not an even trade. And like a major consideration, I think, for all of us up here.
Yeah, I'd have to go back too, but from my understanding, we said that we were gonna do some of the outside lights, if I'm not misunderstood, maybe I misunderstood, but that's what I thought the understanding was, but.
So that could be your understanding, but
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure that's not what we understood up here.
Something we can look at, for sure.
Commissioner Colo?
Yeah, Commissioner Mason, I think it's not only what we understood, but what the contract reflects, and that's more important here. It's kind of a bait and switch, sir.
Okay.
So you discussed the pavers, people won't see it. So how does water runoff impact if people sees the pavers or not? So I'm just asking, if you put it with concrete, what's the benefit you see to the groundwater retention?
Again, I'm not,
Yeah.
it's something that the engineer here, but the way we have it engineered with the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Concrete? Hard surface?
No,
Not
with the retention and detention, we have it set up for it to work properly, with the wash stone. So,
And then before we had solar on top of the units.
yes,
That would power because solar panels on top of a unit are not just gonna power your streetlights, they're gonna power into the units themselves too. So now it sounds like you only wanna do solar on the streetlights. I wanna make sure I'm just understanding that correctly.
on the interior of the building or the exterior of the building?
It sounds like you're only putting solar on little streetlights, kind of like a decoration outside.
Well, not decoration, we got lights, we got the poles, and I believe on the top side of the lights, I thought there was some low voltage, some solar.
Low voltage being kind of
Solar.
keyword there, right?
No, they're solar.
Low voltage solar.
They're not spotlights, they're low lights.
Okay. And then we're talking about species, changing them. I just want to make sure I heard this. You want a narrow tree, correct?
Yeah, same height as the honey locust, not as messy, narrow and
Yeah.
long. It gives, so you can
So
see the building.
that diameter is not quite as big then, right?
It's wide, oh yeah, honey locust can go very wide. Right.
So you want something narrow, right?
Correct,
Okay.
and long, it's still gonna be tall.
Yeah.
You know, just narrow.
Are you aware that larger trees suck up more water from the ground system, which is why we have that requirement within the ordinance?
The honey locust?
Not the honey locust, a wider diameter inch tree.
Okay.
That's better for our community.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just some of the points here, and what's disappointing is that we're being brought a plan where perhaps you have addressed some of these concerns, and yet it's not reflected in the documentation that is before us today. I would say, of the changes that are being proposed, the screening wall to the east or
South.
to the south, I don't care about. Honey locust trees are not a desirable tree. They're not a durable tree, so replacing them with these two species, I think, is an improvement. I want to know the difference between a rain garden versus planting beds.
Me too.
And so this might be something that we postpone and kick back until you can bring your civil engineer in with you. I do not recall, and Mr. Murphy can correct me on this, but while we approved a plan with solar panels on the roof, there were not any specifications about how much power it would generate or what it would be used for. So I'm not sure, what they're proposing here as freestanding lights may be a suitable substitute. And if indeed you now have 4 EV charging stations instead of 2, bonus round. But unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to be inclined to, and the energy efficient appliances and composition and so forth, that was in your original plan, it's not here now. if you still want to do that, you have the opportunity to bring that back to
We'll do
us.
that. Yep,
But
that's good stuff.
unless I hear something otherwise, I'm going to be inclined to move that we postpone this until we can get more information.
Yeah, and I'd say, yeah, some of the details missing here, because we have to be very specific in the agreement, what we are signing up for. And I think, I'll just go off what Commissioner Douglas said, like the screening walls, I'm fine with it. I have a whole issue with screening walls in general, because they look ugly. Inevitably, within 6 months, people back into them, and they just look like this patchwork of, and most SUVs now can go over them, so I'm not sure they serve all the purposes we want them to, but I have no issue with that. I think what we have here is, and like in any agreement, we go in with some preliminary ideas and drawings. I think it's important that you look at outcomes. So if there's a rain garden, or there's a paver situation, or there is a tree planting situation, I think working with your engineering team and your architectural team to say, okay, this property now, because of these features, we're going to reduce the amount, this many inches of water per hour into the storm system. And I think that's the reason why it's not pavers for the sake of aesthetics, it's pavers for the sake of having water be returned to the ground versus that water, going into our system, and then if there's a heavy rainstorm, it backs up basements. So if you have a different way to do that, now that you've gone deeper into the project, I think we're all ears, but I think those outcomes need to be defined. You need to say, look, originally we thought we were going to eliminate 1.5 inches, whatever, and now it's going to be 2.5, but we're going to call things differently and moves, and that may have pavers, it may not. You may have a different way to go about it. Cool. The proposal to us was pavers, but if you want to, find a different way to reduce the amount of stormwater in our system, we're all ears, and we'll listen to those outcomes, because the benefit is the outcome, right? The same thing with solar, understanding what the kilowatt hour savings are. You'll hear a word often, or a phrase often talked about at our planning, because Mr. Gontina brings it up, rightfully so all the time, but a net zero. Like, how are these buildings, like a building built today, if you're just to follow standard building code, how does this building look compared to if you just built to standard building code? And all of the things that you had proposed in the beginning of the agreement, make sure that if they're eliminated, talk about it, but if they're replaced by some better ideas, then we can understand, like a standard building, if I were to build these dimensions, would be this amount of electricity usage or gas usage or whatever. And now, as you put those details in the plan, it's going to be reduced by 10%, 15%, 20%, because that's an outcome that we want, right? We want to have reduced stress on our utility infrastructure in the city. So we don't have power outages, we don't have, we can abide by our SCAP plan. So I think, it looks like, you had some ideas here to change things, but I think if you work with your team a little bit and look at how those changes actually, we can see the walk and the outcomes, again, like stormwater runoff, and how, the utilities are being improved with solar. I think that is a reasonable thing to do, but make no mistake. I mean, I think the intentions of why if we enter into a PUD, it's because we have to have clear, articulable benefits to the public that we're achieving. Some plans, whether that's affordable housing, whether that's energy efficiency, whether it's stormwater runoff, or all of the above. Okay. So I think you got to focus on those outcomes.
Fair enough.
We'll go with Commissioner Cole and Commissioner Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've all had our questions. I'm going to make a motion to deny this application.
To deny or to postpone?
No, I'm making a motion to deny. I think it can go back if the applicant can apply again if needed. I don't want to waste staff's time on another revision. We've spent time discussing this, and if they want to apply, they can go back to staff and apply again for a reconsideration at a different time or date.
Okay, there's a motion on the table, seconded by Commissioner Macy. I'll just have a question for staff on this. So the challenge with denying versus giving the petitioner a chance to listen to our feedback and recalibrate their project might be, and maybe Mr. Grochowski or Mr. Murphy has the answer, does that reset the clock on this property that they can't submit another application for 18 months or a year or something like that on the property? And does it cancel the PUD, or does it only give them the option to do the original PUD, which sounds like there was also some information there we may have wanted?
The original agreement would still remain, and they would be able to implement that. There is no provision in the zoning ordinance which states that they couldn't come back within less than a certain time frame. There are, for particular instances, nothing for an amendment to an existing development agreement. So there's no defined time frame, but obviously the petitioner will have gotten a clear understanding of your.
So speaking of outcomes, the outcome of a.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to buttress that with, I think to answer your question, where you're familiar with if like a planning commission request is denied, they can't reapply for another year. Because this is an amendment to an existing PUD development agreement, those same standards or statutes don't apply. So they would be able to maybe take what you heard tonight or what they heard tonight and maybe come back with a different proposal or plan incorporating and thus it's somewhat postponed anyways, even though the motion's to adjourn or deny, they could still come back to the planning commission with a different request to amend.
So the motion is to deny the amendment that's been proposed. It
Correct.
doesn't prohibit them from coming back with a different amendment that
Correct.
encompasses the feedback that this body
And
committed.
that would-
So denying and postponing have the exact same outcome for the petitioner, essentially. I mean, in terms of having to propose something new.
Either way, staff time will have to be sent on
Right.
any new submissions.
Well, and it would have, all of that was very well stated. If it's a denial, the petitioner would need to file a new application fee. If it's postponed, there would be no additional fee.
But this is a PUD, so there wouldn't be an additional fee, would there?
There are for amendments, yes, there are fees. There's a fee structure.
Okay. How much is that fee?
That's something that I'm glad I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
We don't process them that often, often for good reason.
Okay. Commissioner Cheatham?
I'm just wondering if there's any other difference in workload for staff between these two options.
One would they'd have to.
Sounds
charge
like there's a
fee.
clerk payment involved, but.
Well, a motion to deny may give the petitioner a clear understanding to move forward with what was already approved, as opposed to motion to postpone would encourage them to come back with a modification and consider it again. So if it was denied, we would be able to administratively approve what was building permits and engineering permits for what was included in the original plan unit development agreement, not a whole lot of staff time. But for them to come back again, yes, there's certainly dedicated staff time to review and process, and be here tonight is absolutely more time than moving forward with what's already been approved.
Commissioner Colo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you can sit down too, you don't have to.
Okay.
I don't want to keep you standing up for no reason here. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the motion to deny does send a clear message that the city of Royal Oak values our community benefits ordinance and what we have implemented to it. We have all been up here at the table fierce champions of it, while also working with the development community. We are definitely looking for developers who want to work within the bounds of these ordinances. The motion to deny sets a clear, I'm sure we've had a lot of dialogue up here that's been good and productive into what we're looking for. Looking at staff time to review this, it's been a lot of time to review it tonight, and I want to make sure that when someone comes back, they're definitely taking it seriously and have the ability to answer all the questions before them about what we're looking for, especially since we have staff who have spent time reviewing it. All of us have spent time reviewing it, and it wasn't ready. So I think in fairness to us, staff, and the people of Royal Oak who we enacted those benefits for, it would make sense to deny this tonight.
Commissioner Macy?
Yeah, I basically agree. I mean, I heard what you were saying about postponing and, giving them a chance to kind of make some modifications, but I guess what I disagree with you on is that there would just be minor changes that would be acceptable. So I heard you say, Mary, they could come back and say, well, actually, it's only this much reduction. But I mean, when I read this the first time, it was shocking, the list of, they basically took all of the things that they had said they were gonna give to us out, and they put a couple small kernels in, but it was very surprising, and I don't know that was understood by the developer, that this was quite a big change and not at all what we agreed to last year. So I think part of what I'm trying to say up here is that this is not an acceptable way to do business, is to come with a PUD that says one thing and then come back 8 months later with something completely different and expect us to say that's fine. Like these were a lot of big changes to the community benefits, essentially every single one.
Commissioner Douglas?
So I'm going to remind the commissioners that our community benefits guidelines are just guidelines. Nevertheless, and they are voluntarily agreed to in a plan unit development discussion with the Planning Commission. So they made while those benefits are not required, can't be imposed, once the Planning Commission accepted the proposal, and then once the City Commission accepted the plan unit development that was brought to us, those requirements were carved in stone. So, I mean, just everybody remember that community benefits are not a requirement. They're optional, but in this case, they have the applicant has brought them upon himself. And I don't disagree with your assertions here, but I just wanted to make sure people remembered that distinction.
Commissioner Colo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Douglas, I definitely would agree with you, but I would also say that when we consider as a group what we would deem acceptable to be a PUD, that would be acceptable to go outside or go a different route than maybe traditional development. We do consider those community benefits, so those add heavy weight into what we consider, and that guideline that we produce came before us because we were kind of lacking what a community benefit was. So it helped us define that. And there is not a right way to do community benefits. There is no one size fits all to community benefits. So that's the beauty of this package. It could be anything from EV, it could be public art, it could be improved green space and infrastructure. There is no one item on it. So while taking away one or components of a community benefit is one thing, it's the sum of the whole in this situation, I think, is the bigger thing here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say with my colleagues, I mean, yeah, it does send a message, but I also want to, be careful that we don't overburden somebody if they are willing to make changes. So I have always, on every vote that we make up here, it's not always 100%. Sometimes internally it's 51%, we're going to vote for something, or 49%, we vote against it in our mind when we do the calculus. I think here, certainly, I think the developer has proposed changes that are different, dramatically different from the original agreement. I think that the developer, at least from what I can tell, has shown a willingness to come back and provide some more information, more details that we're looking for, and hopefully takes the advice of looking at targeted outcomes. Maybe pavers isn't the right answer, but there's another design that will achieve the same infiltration into the ground versus going into the sewer system. Same thing with solar. Maybe there's a new vendor he can speak with. I'm not going to go against the grain here because ultimately I would not have accepted any of these changes. I just think the denial is a little strong, but only because of the fee associated with it. But I've gotten confirmation from the city attorney and from Mr. Murphy that there's the next step. If you want to come in tomorrow and make another amendment and pay the fee to make another amendment to the agreement that has more calculable, articulatable community benefits section that you think we will be more receptive to, I think that's a good thing. So anybody have anything else? So the motion on the table is to deny the amendment. All right, the proposed amendment. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, so do you understand the next step for you?
Almost.
Yeah, so your changes,
Okay.
we found weren't in the spirit of the original PUD. So you got to go back, talk to your engineering team. You can play this tape back in a week and have your consultants and whatnot listen to our feedback, and you can listen to it. And then if you want to, you can certainly move forward with the original agreement we had, no problems. if you want to look at these changes differently or have a better game plan with some different things that meet the spirit of the original PUD, I think we're open to that as long as you can define the outcomes.
Fair.
Okay?
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
All right, that gives us to item 12, which is a request to reserve American Rescue Plan Act funds to new affordable multifamily housing developments. Mr. Murphy.
In February of last year, the City Commission allocated $1,950,000 of the city's American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA for abbreviation, funds to financially assist the construction of new affordable multifamily housing units within the city. ARPA affordable units must be occupied by households with an annual income not to exceed 120% of the area median income. That's a lot of abbreviations and jargon. The table on this in the report and on the screen in front of you, that shows you the maximum income that a household, depending on the number of persons living in that household, how much of a maximum income they can make as of this year and be eligible to live in that essentially funded unit. The units must remain affordable for a period of no less than 20 years. And a proportional number of affordable units must be created based on the city's contribution to the project. So I'll give a crude example of a $10 million development that includes 50 units. If the city allocates $1.95 million to a $10 million project, that's essentially 20% of the total cost of that development. Therefore, there needs to be at least 20% of the units that are created in that development reserved for individuals that make no more than the income highlighted on the screen in front of you. We must expend all of our ARPA funds by the end of December of 2026. So that time frame is actually closing in on us when you relate it to a large-scale multifamily development. Two developers, Akuri Group of Royal Oak and Lockwood Development Company, are seeking an exclusive reserve of these funds. And each developer has provided you with information about their development proposal, and each developer is here tonight to present an overview of their project to you and to answer any questions that you may have. But with an exclusive reserve, the city would be prohibited from discussing allocating these funds to another project. It would give them exclusivity to have a reserved time in which they would continue to do their due diligence on the project. They would be able to also go through local approval processes as well as seeking additional financing for the project. Any action by the City Commission to reserve the funds doesn't guarantee access to the funds. That would occur at a later action by the City Commission to a development. I'll also point out that recently the Oakland County established the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund, and they set aside funds from the county's general fund as well as a large chunk of their ARPA funds to also financially assist projects that are of this exact same type of need, affordable housing. So the city's expert ARPA consultant, Guidehouse, they've given us information that there are no ARPA regulations that prohibit the City Commission from transferring all of the funds, the $1.95 million, if you wish, to transfer the funds to the county's Housing Trust Fund for a project that they could fund specifically within the city of Royal Oak. So within the city limits, that could be your caveat, your earmark. Yes, correct. And that would be a great opportunity for leveraging funds to make a project happen within the city of Royal Oak. So after you dialogue with the developers tonight, staff has provided several different options for you to choose from. Option one, we believe, is to adopt a motion to reserve, again, set aside the funds to one of the projects, proportionally split the funds amongst both projects, or you're choosing some type of ratio to both. The second choice is for you to adopt a motion to direct staff to create a future budget adjustment and transfer these funds to the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund. And third, you're not required to take any action. You can certainly, at a future meeting, take this allocation and reallocate it, if you wish, to any other number of projects that you see fit. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have prior to hearing from each of the developers.
Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, thank you for coming with all this information and lots of different options for us. So if in the transfer to the Oakland County Housing Task Force, does that count as our, spending it? So like that, the 2026 deadline that we have to spend that 1.95, if we do the transfer, is that, we've checked the box or no? Do they have to spend it?
That's my understanding. They also had that same time frame. So they would need to write the check in their total amount, whatever they're contributing, as well as whatever amount the city commission decides to provide to them as well. So they would need to meet that financial burden essentially would be placed upon them. And I believe that based on our conversation with Guidehouse, that would qualify us for expending the funds, but it definitely puts the burden on the county for them spending their funds as well.
Okay, so the 1.95, well, let's just call it 2 million. Let's say we give them, we drew the $2 million transfer. They don't have to spend our 2 million by 2026, right? Because we've spent it. But they have to spend their pot of money that they put in there by 2026.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And my other question was, I think you just said this, but they had the funds that they have in there from Oakland County, that's their ARPA funds, and that could be matched with our dollars for Royal Oak projects, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So transferring the funds to the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund, I do believe based on guidelines, communication with us would fulfill our expenditure requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
But with that transfer, would we lose, then it's up to Oakland County to have more control over that 2 million to determine which projects they deem are acceptable in Royal Oak, and they would have to manage that disbursement to whatever petitioner that would want to take advantage of it to achieve the goal.
Yes, petitioner or petitioners.
Right.
And they would have their own structure of determining how they seek developers, how they distribute the funds in any manner they see fit. Of course, that complies with federal regulations as well.
Okay. Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we're hearing about these tonight, I would be interested in also hearing from Oakland County. I know there's not a presentation. I know their housing trust chief, Kyle Hines, would be willing to work with us, but I wonder if there's an option where if we give Oakland County the money, there's also the caveat that Royal Oak is approving what this goes to, and we're working together with them. I think, once again, there's not one size fit all here, because I believe part of the offer from Oakland County is not only to manage that, but also manage the ongoing reporting, because there's stipulations that go with monitoring the AMI and the occupancy of the different housing complexes. So and as we grow, this is maybe something for this body to think about, but we don't have a housing commission in Oakland County, and we have more and more attainable units that are coming online that have to meet certain reporting thresholds. And this might, Oakland County has infrastructure in place to go through and audit these records on a yearly basis that we just don't have set up. So I think that we might have, once again, that third option is to look to Oakland County to maybe enhance what they can do for us and work with them as partners as we develop how to do this in the future.
So I think it's probably a twist on option number 2, to come back with a budget adjustment to transfer the funds and have more ironed out details as to not just transferring, but what occurs with that transfer.
Yeah. Great. Commissioner Chisholm.
Yeah, I also have some questions about what a potential partnership with Oakland County could yield, because we're talking about leveraging dollars, but we don't know if there's any dollars that they're earmarking for Royal Oak necessarily. So are we leveraging anything? And if if there's the possibility of leveraging with a developer who's going to do something in multiple places, I don't know if either of these folks are on that table. So I feel like we don't have a lot of information that we would really need to be able to make a decision on the Oakland County option before us this evening. So that's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, agreed. We need more information from Oakland County about how this would work. But I was thinking that they, at the moment, don't have any necessarily reason to pick Royal Oak, But if they're holding $2 million of our dollars and people are going to be going to them to apply for those $2 million, they might throw in some of their dollars too. So, I mean, you're right, like there's nothing saying that they necessarily will, and if they're spending their money elsewhere, we may be out of luck, but like putting money into the pot seems like a way to increase our chances of getting some of the money back from them, I hope.
Commissioner Douglas?
Well, and the staff explanation does say that Lockwood, which is one of the two applicants that we're looking at here, is already talking with Oakland County. So would it be reasonable to suspect or wish that once we transferred the money to Oakland County, they're already talking with someone who's got a deal on some land here, and that might, A, move the project forward, and B, solve the administrative issues which Commissioner Colo mentioned, and I do think are onerous on our staff.
Well, I think those are good points, and I think part of that calculus is going to be to hear what the birds in the hand are, right? We have two proposals that are in front of us right now where two professional groups are looking at fulfilling the mission when it comes to affordability. They have two different approaches, two different geographies to do it within the city, and I think that kind of helps, with the calculus a little bit to see are we interested in both? Are we interested in one? And then how we would go about that from a technical point of view. Do we leverage Oakland County more? Do we, have something that's totally understandable and easy to decide upon in short order? So I think maybe we want to hear the petitioners and what they have to say and what they're looking to do with such exclusivity. So, Mr. Murphy, I don't know what's the best way to go about this. Is that the appropriate time to do this right now, according to the plan you had mapped out?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Is it a coin toss who goes first?
You do it alphabetical.
Okay. So anyone with the letter Z? No. Okay. I think it's a Curry group then. Comes before L, correct?
Thank you. The luck of the draw with the alphabet. I'm Dennis Cowan, representing the Curry Group, and Mr. Curry is with me. But we just have a very brief presentation. Actually, Mr. Curry talked to the city some time ago, last year actually, about ARPA funds and a couple different projects here in the city. So now following through on the opportunity to have a designation of these funds to the project at 505 South Lafayette Street. That is a 10-story structure which will consist of 54 multifamily units along with the first floor being retail. That'll be about 4,000 square feet. There will be 36 one-bedroom sites or units and 18 two-bedroom. The amenities will include live workspace for tenants. We also know that today it's very important to have a shipping packaging type room for deliveries as we continue in this Amazon world. And then we're still in moving from what I would call high concept plans into more definitive, and that takes a little while. So we asked for exclusivity period of about 6 months to take a look, a hard look, as we develop the plans and move forward with our process. Our overall project costs are somewhere between $15 to $18 million. So from our perspective, we think that it doesn't make a lot of sense unless we have the total grant of the 1.95. It's totally up to you, as has been pointed out, how you want to proceed, but if you do the numbers, we're probably capping out at 10 or 11 units based upon the 20% formula. So that's where our project is at. On a global basis, Mr. Curry and his team are very, very excited about doing this project. He's owned that property for a number of years and was looking forward to an opportunity to do something special, and we believe this will be a special project. So that's really our just skin and bones at this point in time of where we're at in terms of our project. Do you have any questions, or we'll be around, so if you want to ask questions later, once you get to hear from the Lockwood team.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes, thank you, and I'll ask this of the other developer as well. Given that we have to spend this money by December of 2026, is your project timeline such that you would be at a point to claim and use the money to complete the project by that deadline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the 6-month period will pretty much be the time that's needed to do a lot of the drawings and then do the cost estimates and fit it together with our building team, engineering team. The good news on our point is Mr. Curry has had some things done already. He's also owned the property for a number of years, so he's very familiar with it. The one issue we're going to have is we have a DTE relocation situation, and you all know those are always interesting, but we think we can manage that. But no, the timeline, we understand that, and we believe, because if we get, we'll be able to manage that timeline. If we get through the 6 months to January, so to speak, that would then give us almost 2 years, and this is about an 18-month completion process.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question as well that I'll ask to the other petitioner. You know, the amount that we have earmarked is $1.95 million. I'm trying to read the ask in the letter, and is the ask for exclusivity to have a shot at some part of that, or are you asking for the full 1 point? I mean, I know the generic answer is always going to be, yeah, I want all of it, but I mean, is there, you know, are you saying, hey, look, we just want to know that we're on that list to have a shot at some part of that, or is it all of it? Because we don't want to, I mean, if there's, you know, understanding what makes a project feasible.
No, I want to be real clear, so there's no mistake about it. We believe we need the allocation of the 1.95 to maximize. Splitting it to us, that would not be attractive, because that's an awful lot of work for a 5% or 5 to 7% investment. So, and that's not to say we're very grateful for the opportunity. I want to clarify that, but from a dollars and cents point of view, when we kind of mapped it out, it would only make sense for you and us if we had the 1.95. And if that's a difference that you want to, if you want to do it differently, we understand that, but that's really from our perspective. I don't know, now that you mentioned Oakland County, I don't know if that trust fund that they have can supplement that, and we'll call and find out about that. That's just something we were actually kicking around earlier today. So, okay. All right, thank you, and we'll be here.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Commission. My name is Stephen Drunnen with Lockwood Companies. I'm here to talk about the proposal that we have on 400 East 3rd Street. So this development we've been working on for the last a little more than a year. At this point, we put our initial application into the city back in March, and then we've worked on various other different proposals, both to the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund and to the Michigan State Housing Development Authority for other tax credits in order to leverage these funds as far as we possibly can. So the development that we're talking about here is a 51-unit apartment development. This is a mix of both affordable and market rate housing. So in this case, of the 51 units, 34 of them would be affordable, 17 would be market rate. And when I say affordable, I am talking about true affordable housing. So this is at 60% of the area median income, and they would be committed to that level for the next 30 years, which is an additional 10 years beyond what is required by the ARPA funding. The development itself has a 60-space parking garage underneath it, so one floor is partially below grade, one floor above, and then 4 floors of housing above that. I think there was an excellent discussion at the commission as far as the process with Oakland County that I think I can probably shed a little bit of light on that may help make your decisions a little bit easier here. We are in conversation with them. We have made an application for an additional $5 million of funds for the project. They are working to identify those. I don't want to speak for them, but everything is looking very promising on that front, and then we've applied to MSHDA for the remainder of this. So this would potentially leverage these funds at a 10-to-1 ratio, which is enormous for public investments. So we have a look at the conceptual project here. You can see the roof deck on the top. As far as amenities, we do have the roof deck. There's a community space with just a lounge, fitness center, and those sorts of things, leasing office and package receiving rooms and things like that on the ground floor. So in terms of our timing, we are through the first wave of the application process to MSHDA. Those went in April. The next batch, or the full application, is due to them in September, and they would announce the results of those in November. So we're asking for that 6-month exclusivity period to allow us to proceed through that process and close on the whole financing package in the spring of 2025 and be able to expend the funds well before the ARPA deadlines. So I think I've covered most of that, but again, happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Commissioner Hunt.
So you said there'll be 34 affordable, 17 market rate.
Correct.
Does the 34 affordable include the use of the $5 million that's proposed from Oakland County, or you believe will be received from Oakland County?
Correct. That's all lumped together into the same part of the capital stack for the entire project.
So is there an estimate of if it were just the 1.9 or 2 million, what that affordability would be reduced to?
The project in its current iteration would not be feasible without it. So it's not like I can just cut the affordability and ratchet it up that way.
So you're relying on that 5 million from
We
Oakland County?
We are. And then they're giving us every indication. I've been in conversations with Kyle Hines as recently as today. All indications are looking positive as they try to identify those sources. So again, I don't want to speak for them, but it's looking good.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I'll ask the same question I asked the other petitioner. Is the 1.95, is the project you need all of that 1.95 to make it happen? Or is it, if you secure the Oakland County $5 million and without the 1.95, it's a dead project?
In its current iteration, we do need the full amount. So that's not to say that we couldn't go back to the drawing board and try to cut it down, but that does get to a reduction of units. And so we're pretty creative. We're pretty good at problem solving, but we've been problem solving and trying to close this gap for quite a while, and I think we've really balanced it nicely. So rambling way of saying we kind of do need the full amount to make this project
The full amount
work.
to get the full impact, and if you weren't to get the full amount, you would have to go back to the drawing board, and it would be a significantly rescoped project. but
Exactly.
Not maybe entirely dead. You'd have to cross that bridge at that time.
Exactly.
Okay, understood. Commissioner Cheatham.
So can you just clarify, the full amount is the funding that you're requesting this evening from us, the funding from the county, but also the MSHDA funding?
Correct. So to do the true affordable housing, these rents are very limited. So for instance, when we say 60% of the area median income, rents in Oakland County are averaging around $1,900 a month. At this 60% level, we'd be limiting those to $1,080 for 1 bedrooms and $1,213 for the 2 bedrooms. So because we do have to cut our potential revenue so low below market, it really does require leveraging the various different public resources available to do that.
If I may, I'll note that when the original guidelines came out from the U.S. Department of Treasury, the maximum household income limit was 65% of area median income. It was only in about 3 weeks ago that they revised that to nearly double it to 120%. It was because the funds haven't been expended remotely close to what they were hoping for. So they did increase that limit dramatically. And as noted, their proposal is at 60%, closer to the original. But again, ARPA regulations did change to allow up to 120% of area median income more recently.
Commissioner Macy.
I'm not sure who this question is for. It's probably for Mr. Murphy, actually. So, again, if we give our 2 million to Oakland County, and they're already in talks to give them the 5 million, would they then just take away 2 of the million they're giving him now and give him our 2 million? I guess you probably don't know that, but I'm wondering how that transfer would it just be like there's 2 million available for Royal Oak projects, boom, we got a Royal Oak project, or would they? I guess we don't know. We're just speculating. What do you think?
We would be speculating, and I'm not sure that we would even the trust fund manager would even be able to provide you a clear answer to that, as they do accept applications for the funds on a regular basis. So they may be working with other groups that we're unaware of. I don't know that, and they may not be able to give you an unquestionable, clear directive on that.
I think I probably can give a little bit, but again, I can't speak for them. But the gap in our project is about $7 million. So in our conversations with the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund, it has been, if that were to happen, to transfer the funds from Royal Oak to Oakland County, that would be part of a process that is specifically earmarked to this project. So those funds would come back into Royal Oak. So what we're asking for tonight is a reservation of those funds for this project, but not necessarily, here, just dump them off to Oakland County. So we would come back with a full development agreement that would come back in front of you, and perhaps at that time, it would go to Oakland County with those specifics on it. So I hope I'm not overstepping, but with the idea that it would all come back.
Commissioner Chisholm.
This might also be for Mr. Murphy, but I guess I'm wondering if one of these other pockets of money does not come through, if we would have difficulty then spending the funds in the time frame that we need to spend them. So I'm not sure who can answer that question, but.
There may be challenges to expending the funds on new affordable multifamily developments, but I'm sure that we could present you with a variety of other things to spend the funds on that would be ARPA eligible. Yes, but to go essentially back to the drawing board and talk to another set of developers really limits that window. You are absolutely correct.
And can I follow up? So I'm quite sure we can find really wonderful ways to spend money. Would it be housing related?
With new construction, I think it may be challenging to meet a closing window of opportunity. It could be reserved, it could be allocated differently. For instance, when you set aside the $1.95 million, you also set aside $50,000 for us to enter into an agreement with a local organization to operate a rental assistance program. Something like that is, you could shift a certain amount of funds or all the funds to something like that, housing related, and that could be put into motion very, very quickly.
Oh, I can see your hand there. Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both for the presentation today. I think it's very enlightening. I think our next round of questions now becomes more for Oakland County than can be answered tonight. So that might be something we'll consider as we move forward here. But luckily, I think we all have just a little bit of time here. Like, a decision might not be necessary tonight. I'm sure everyone would like to hear one, but a little bit more clarity from Oakland County on their plans and what we can partner with them with, I think would help us have a clear path forward on what might be a project that we would like to see. Because I think ideally we could build both these, and you know, that's clearly the ideal. You know, the more attainable housing units we have in the city, the more development, the more neighbors we can bring in. That's amazing prospects. So I think we maybe would want to potentially kick this back to staff to work with Oakland County a little bit more to give us a little bit more on their end, some ideas on what they're looking like for funding for one or both projects, and how they can potentially service us moving forward. So we have control and specifically earmark where the money goes if we give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, the good news. Oh.
If I could make one timing point, I never want to rush anyone on these things, but the tax credits that we've applied to MSHDA for do have a full application that is due on September 2nd. So we do still have time. This is not, you know, have to make a call right now, but just so that you do know that we do have pending deadlines that are outside of our control. And we do need to have a detailed packet into them. So that process began back in April, and it's coming to this body now, but that is the next step that seems far away, but it's 6 weeks.
Hey, we're here, John Woods by any chance? Because that sounds like something here. That's a joke for this, sorry.
Okay. No, that's helpful to know the timeline
Certainly.
because, we don't want to postpone a decision too long to where, we end up with nothing. Everybody's unhappy. So,
Appreciate it.
okay. Yeah, we'll call you back up if we need you. I think we'll discuss it at the table here for a little bit. Appreciate all the petitioners coming up tonight and explaining their proposals. I think this is actually a really good news story, right? We had this ARPA funding come in. We were very fortunate to be a beneficiary of this money through the hard work of the administration. 28 million came to Royal Oak. We're putting it to work. We're putting it to use. We've done a lot of great work with it. And, part of our strategy all along was, how do we address some of the economic impacts that have plagued our city, but especially coming out of COVID, there's been a lot of changes in employment and things of that nature, and people need more affordable places to live. And so what we have in front of us, we had 1.95 million as part of the ARPA funding dedicated towards affordable housing opportunities. What did that mean? Don't know. We kind of had to feel it out. We haven't ever done this before. And now tonight, we're seeing two proposals here, one with, each 50 units roughly, one with around 10 or 11 potential workforce housing units, and another one with 34 workforce or affordable housing units, right in the heart of our downtown, which means this is fitting with our strategy where we've listened to a lot of our business owners, and if you're working really hard day in and day out with honorable work in our downtown, serving food, managing coffee shops, whatever it may be, sort of the strength of our American economy and society, hardworking women and men, it would be nice if they would have opportunities to live in the community they work in. And so this is a really good news story that we have folks that have well thought out plans that are saying, yep, the people of Royal Oak have a really good idea here and we'd like to take advantage of it. So it's one of these situations where now we're confronted with a decision that, is a tough decision what we do next, but also a decision that any city would love to have. So I do agree. I think we need a little bit of insight on how we, just frankly speaking, how we play our technical cards here with Oakland County. They've always been a really good partner. We're fortunate to have great relationships with the leadership in Oakland County at all levels, and certainly Oakland County is really receptive to the amazing things we're doing here in Royal Oak. So I think there's been some questions more on the technicalities. If we pick one or pick two or put it into a fund, what does that mean in terms of, if we say we like one of these projects best and we say, hey, we're going to give the money to Oakland County to manage it for us for this project, and what happens if that project doesn't come to fruition? Like, what are some of those details? Like, does that money come back to it? Like, we don't want to, we have two good things in front of us. I think two workable projects in front of us, and hopefully they're likely to go through, but if they don't, what happens? So I think there's some questions we need to get answered, and what's, ultimately going to be best for our city. But I think ultimately to have, they say a bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. It's like we have two in the hand and one in the bush, which is, a better position to be in. So, okay, Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, quick question. Certainly, we as a commission have a very strong commitment to providing attainable, affordable housing in our community. But I want to ask Mr. Wallenweber, we have other projects for which we have committed ARPA funds. And we've already heard that, things are expensive, there are maybe cost overruns. And I want to ask the question, are there any projects that we've already committed to that are at risk where we might deeply regret not being able to spend this money on housing, but we might be forced to spend it on something else that we've already agreed to?
Yeah, good question. And that I spoke to finance staff. Kim is here this evening.
we think we're in reasonably good shape. There are projects that are still moving along, but the estimates are higher, but we're going to be able to cover those, we believe, without tapping this money, because that was the question. I had the same question last week. And so we have sufficient funds, they believe, and of course, we're now doing audit prep, so we won't really have a better answer on that, on some of the others. For example, just on the restrooms at the next door.
Farmers Market.
Those are farmers market. Those are estimated to be higher than what we had allocated, but there's sufficient funds to cover those as well. So I think that was a good question. Kim, is there anything you want to add that I haven't said about this? But you know, they're in year-end closing times now, which means we're going to be reminding staff tomorrow at the staff meeting to make sure all the bills get in, but it's usually August 15th before we officially close last year, and then we'll be able to do a better summary of where we are on these. But they felt we were in reasonably good shape to participate one way or the other in this project.
Good, thank you.
All right, we got a great group of commissioners up here that bring all different professional competencies and disciplines. What's the idea to do next? Commissioner Douglas.
So can we get Oakland County in here at our next meeting?
I will certainly reach out to them and request their presence. And anything that you might want beforehand to give you a clearer understanding of the trust fund, how it's set up, how it functions, their current funding levels, things that they're processing, an overview of that, but get into a deeper conversation at a next available meeting. Yes.
And Mr. Murphy, based on the questions and discussion we had here tonight, giving them a heads up of some of the things that we're, you know, interested in, not that we're challenging them, but that, hey, you know, it'd be good to kind of know where, if we have a meeting of the minds on some of these things before we make the next step.
Yes, and I think that they will be very excited to come and have the conversation.
Wonderful. All right. I don't know that we need.
I could just direction to staff, and we'll be in contact with them.
Okay. You want that in a resolution, or are you good?
No, we're
Understood.
good.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, notwithstanding anything for the betterment of our fine city further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Herzog, jumping in on there. Excited to make that second. All right. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned.